welcome back to my channel. So today we're gonna do a TBR video, and I'm actually gonna do something a little bit different this time. I had filmed my October TBR at the beginning of October and just haven't got to editing it and putting it up. So I was thinking about it, and it's already getting towards the end of October, and I'm just like not gonna be able to do both. So I'm like, okay, let's combine them. And I've still had a really fun time doing this and just want to continue and keep kind of on a roll with these TBR prompts. So I'm just gonna film the one for November as well, and we will do a combined one. So now I will send you back to October for the first one. I think I wanted to start this video with doing a really quick check-in from September. I am pretty proud of myself. I finished most of the books. It's a little before October 1st, so I have a little more time, but I have finished these 4 that were on my September TBR video, and I'm not done with this yet. I've started it. I think I'm like 100 pages in, so I'm hoping it'll finish, but it won't change this video because my kind of rule for like my challenge or like not finishing is that if I don't finish 2, then I have to do a challenge prompt. So I'm really proud of myself for this month. I was like not sure how this was gonna go, and I actually had such a great time. I feel like I chose good options, and the ones that like I like randomly chose ended up being like fun to read. So I'm gonna add 3 like categories that don't necessarily have to like add a book, but if one like if it's not filled, then I'm gonna have to like add a book to fill it. And it's because I was like pondering and thinking a lot about my like own personal reading goals, especially in the context of like my older TBR jar that I've been pulling one of. So like this was the one from September, and just like getting through those books and like the goals that I just like have for myself. And one of the goals is definitely like I have a lot of classics that I want to get through, and I feel like they're never prioritized because I feel like it's hard to like get myself to do that because I want to put the time and effort that I feel like I need into reading classics, and they're also kind of just intimidating. There's a lot of stuff surrounding that, but I just had this realization that like if I don't put some goals in, like I don't feel like it's ever gonna happen. So I'm gonna try to read 1 a month, and we're gonna see how this goes. So I may adjust it in the future to like 1 every other month, or at least like be reading a classic. So I'm thinking of like there's a couple like really big books that I want to read that might take me multiple months, but as long as like I have that planned and I'm reading a classic throughout the month, then I'm gonna like count that as fulfilled. So there's a classic. The other thing in like very similar vein, and just of like in my head I'm always like, oh, I really want to do this or read this, is I like have books that I want to reread, and I really rarely reread. I know that varies. Some people are really good at that. I am just not. It's very rare that I reread. But like I have books that I like want to give another chance to. So like why am I rereading? It's maybe because it's like a favorite book, or I just know I want to give it more thought, right? So I just know I can get more out of it like a second time, and like I want to spend the time doing that. But I really have not actively done that, which means it hasn't really happened for me because it just hasn't naturally. So that is something else that I really want to do, is just have a reread. And if I feel like it's a big reading month, I'm gonna add all check these 3 at the end of like making my TBR, because some may already be fulfilled. If not, I can add them on. And if I'm like feeling really intimidated, because like I talked about this in the first video for this TBR prompt challenge, that like I still really want to like be able to have fun reading and don't want it to ever be a chore. So I'm trying to be as flexible as I can, and that like even if it's like a book from when I was a kid, and there's a lot of like childhood books that like I really want to reread. So yeah, I'm gonna be kind of like gentle with myself in that respect, and like let things kind of count for that. The last prompt is just like more for fun, and I kind of do this anyway, but I want to make sure I'm like semi-active about it, and that is having a seasonal read. So especially this time of year is probably what made me think of it, because there's so many like October, fall, autumn, spooky reads. I've seen like a million videos on this, and I've always kind of thought about it and like wanted to do it, and I often do, but I just wanted to include it in the TBR so I can make sure to choose something seasonal. So those are the 3 things I'm adding, and I was like very actively thinking about this in September, and I do have books that I feel like counted for this, and I did think about this as I was going. So For a classic, I finally got around to The Picture of Dorian Gray. I'll talk about this in my wrap up, but I really loved it and I definitely want to reread this at some point, which brings me to my reread, which was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. And I reread this with my partner because we were going to this event in Salt Lake City where T.J. Klune came and spoke about the sequel, the next book in this series, and I'm very excited to read the second one. I actually haven't finished the second one yet, but I had such a good time rereading this, and my partner had never read it, so really loved it. We were like listening to it in the car on a road trip, and it was just great. I loved it. So good. So the last prompt for September, this was really hard because September to me was like a very difficult time in terms of seasonal reads. And I feel like what I probably should have done is a more like academic or like school related might have been good. At the time, I felt like maybe The Picture of Dorian Gray could count, but I also read The Hero of Ages and it just like felt very fantasy, kind of like early fall. But this one was kind of hard and I was very actively trying to figure out which would be. I also even feel like The House in the Cerulean Sea, like end of summer, was kind of fun. Yeah. So this one was like a little bit tougher because I had a harder time thinking about September reads, but I feel like I can go with The Picture of Dorian Gray. Now let's get into the October TBR. Starting with our Old TBR. So these are books that like I acquired, oh, I can't remember what I said, at least like maybe more than 2 or 3 years ago. The last one I read was like one of the oldest books I think that I own. So let's see what we get. This is the one that I think always most nervous about. So I'm choosing one. Let's see what we got. Warriors Don't Cry. I don't even know what this book is. Okay, hold on. Okay. So I pulled Warriors Don't Cry and I am second guessing. I feel like this might be nonfiction. Okay, so this is actually nonfiction, so it should not be in this jar. You know what? I'm just gonna move it. I'm gonna move it to the nonfiction jar and we're gonna pull again. I was thinking about using that as one of the nonfiction picks, but we're just gonna move it and then we're gonna start again here. Okay, let's go again. Syncing it up. I will say how I made these, I just like went through all my shelves and I have nonfiction on another shelf, which is why I was like confused when I saw the name of that book and was like thinking that was nonfiction. Anyway, so, okay, Little Fires Everywhere. Oh my gosh, all right. Okay, Little Fires Everywhere. Great. This is good. It's literally so dusty because, and also I did start this, you can see. I read a pretty good chunk. And I don't know what happened. I clearly like didn't DNF it. I really rarely DNF books. So like I know which ones I've truly DNF'd. I will though like read some and then come back to it and kind of know that like I'm not ready for it at that moment. Anyway, this was like all the rage. I don't know. Was it like four or 5 years ago maybe? I'm trying to remember when this was published. 2017. So yes, and I can't even remember what I read. I feel like this was about this family in the suburbs of Cleveland that, yes, there's like 2 families, this family in the suburbs, and then there's also this other family, this single mother who lives with her teenage daughter Pearl and rents the house that's across from the Richardsons. Yeah. The Richardsons have 4 children and they're like, these families are like kind of drawn to each other and kind of like the drama and secrets that these families both have, I believe. So interesting. Definitely not, I feel like, very autumnal, but we're gonna do it. This is gonna be on October TBR. So now we've pulled this one, and for the nonfiction, I feel like I need to get something else. Okay, there's too many in this little baby jar, so I'm just gonna at least to pull them, put them in here, so I can like shake them up and figure out. And for nonfiction, I pulled 2 and I get to choose 1. And I did mention at the end of the last video, I had kind of been interested in both and didn't end up reading the second, which is fine. So that goes. I hope I put it back in here. All right, that's 2, perfect. Okay, so our choices are Green Thoughts, which I have no idea which book this is. So look at that. and Jane Austen at Home. Very interesting. 2 books that I really haven't thought of that much in a long time. So let me grab them. So, honestly, I'm not sure where I got either of these. I actually, which is funny because I might have gotten both of them from my grandmother, at least maybe this one. So this is this historian Lucy Worsley takes you through Jane Austen's childhood home, her home and her life. This is harder. This is more like how I thought this category was gonna go. Because if I'm being honest, I'm not totally psyched about either one of them at this moment. For the nonfiction, I pretty much put every nonfiction I own in here, even if I've read some of them or certain parts of some of them. So that's why it's kind of flexible in choosing 2. The Green Thoughts. The thing about this one is I believe it's kind of a gardening book, which I think is cool and interesting. I don't know that I want to reread through the whole thing right now. This is such a hard decision. I'm kind of leaning towards Jane Austen at Home. Continue on for now. Okay, so next is the prompts. And I need to put prompts back in the jar, and I talked about this a little bit in my last video, but I'm only putting 2 back because the third one was a book from the 1990s, which is the Haruki Murakami, ended up being that one, but I had been going through all my books and I don't have any, so I could keep it in and have to find or get a new one. For now, I moved that prompt to my challenge prompts. I just think it makes sense, and yeah, easier as is. So I'm gonna put these back. So this is a new release, was the last one. I thought about leaving these out, but there's so many prompts, it's not likely that I'll get one a second time in a row. But yes, the other one was a book that won a literary award. So these are gonna go back in the jar. And we're gonna pull 3. Pick it up. First one, a poetry collection. Oh boy, this is such an interesting month. I have a couple of poetry collections, and I was very tempted to choose something else that was more fall appropriate, but I need to do the right thing for myself and choose a book that I really, really want to finish by the end of this year. And that is Bicycles, Love Poems by Nikki Giovanni. And this is also really a book that's really old on my TBR. I believe I bought this when this author visited my university back in college. And I don't know, I just really, really want to finish it. And it fits one of the Storygraph challenges that I am doing this year. So I'm gonna choose this. Not exactly, this is turning out to really not be the most fall TBR, but oh well. 2. A short story collection. Seriously, this is the weirdest month's TBR. All right, let's see. This is good. So I think what I'm gonna choose is The Bloody Chamber. And this is a collection of stories that includes The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. These are all the stories. And this is something that I was thinking and wanting to read this month and feels very fall, spooky. And I also was possibly going to count this for my classic read, so that's really nice. And literally no description, but I've only heard good things about it, and I'm very intrigued. I've heard it is very fall, spooky-ish. Yeah, so we'll do The Bloody Chamber. Okay, I'm just mixing this up a bit. We have one more. Okay. And that is a book with a name in the title. Okay. That took me forever to figure out. Not because I don't have them, I definitely have some. I just was trying to figure out what I wanted to read. I kind of narrowed it down to between Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier and The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. And I think I'm gonna go with this because it feels lighter, a little bit easier to read, and I feel like I need that. So I'm excited to read it. I don't really know what it's about at all. Hart is a marshal tasked with patrolling the strange and magical wilds of Tanria. It's an unforgiving job, and Hart's got nothing but time to ponder his loneliness. Mercy never has a moment to herself. She's been single-handedly keeping Birdsall and Sons undertakers afloat in defiance of sullen jerks like Hart, who seems to have a gift for showing up right when her patience is thinnest. After yet another exasperating run-in with Mercy, Hart finds himself penning a letter addressed simply to a friend. Much to his surprise, an anonymous letter comes back in return, and a tentative friendship is born. If only Hart knew, he's been bearing his soul to the person who infuriates him most, Mercy. As the dangers from Tanria go closer, so do the unlikely correspondence. But can their blooming romance survive the fated discovery that their pen pals are their worst nightmares each other? Very interesting. It sounds a little Divine Rivals-esque. Yeah, I guess we'll see how it goes. So I don't have that one physically. I'll have that, read that on my iPad, but we'll have that. And then for my like newer prompts, so I think classic will definitely be fulfilled by The Bloody Chamber, which is great because that's like smaller, more palatable read. And what else? We have seasonal reads. I'm so excited for seasonal reads for this. There's so many, and I hope to read more than one for this. So the two that I will mention, Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, which has been on my shelf and my list for a long time. Just haven't gotten around to it, so this year I am making it a goal. The other is The Spell Shop, which has been kind of everywhere and just sounds very, like, I don't know, cute, quaint, idyllic. So yeah, I think my goal is to read these, but I'll like officially add The Spell Shop to my TBR for this. And then last is a reread, which is hard because I still want to stay as much as I can in like the season, especially October. I feel like is the best, and it's so like fun to read super seasonable stuff. So I kind of contemplated this beforehand. My plan for this was to reread the Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch, which I've read the last 2 years. They're graphic novels. I cannot find them anywhere. A little confused by that. I have rearranged my shelves recently and haven't really figured out a new configuration that I like. But I was also going to read some books from my childhood. I just thought it would be really fun to come back to these. I used to love like Dory the Witch books, and I'm so excited. So I'm gonna read these, and I'm gonna find Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch, and I'm gonna reread those. So I wanted to give myself kind of like an easy, very seasonal reread for this month. So that is my plan. So for the physical books that I'm gonna read, here's my little stack. Then there'll also be the Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. I forget already what it's called, but yes. So I think it'll be good. I'm excited, definitely nervous. I'm not sure about the nonfiction situation right now, but I think everything else will be really good, and I'm excited, so feel free to follow along. Okay, now time for our November TBR. And I do have one update I'm gonna make for the last one. The one issue with doing this is that I am filming it quite early. So we are October 20th. It's a bit early. I still have a little time to go and a couple more books to read off of my October TBR, but I have been doing pretty well. So hopefully, I'm hopeful that I'll get them read. But there was a substitution, which kind of defeats the purpose a little bit of all my prompts. But I started reading, and you could kind of tell that I was hesitant about this because the two prompts I pulled for the nonfiction were just like really out of season and kind of just didn't fit my reading vibe at all. And that's partly the point of this, but I had two really solid reasons. I didn't choose the gardening one because I really wanted to do that at a time when I'm actually going to be like using that knowledge. So I set that one aside, and I did the one I chose between the two was Jane Austen at Home, and I started reading it. I was like, fine, I'll read this. Like, I am interested in it, and I don't have a problem like pushing myself to read it. But the issue I ran into was that I was starting to read it and realized that like this is such a perfect book to read like in England. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I just feel like I want to give it a little bit of a chance, and it just didn't feel like the right time. I feel like I'd get so much more if I did this different time, different season, potentially doing it in conjunction with a trip in the future. Again, I have no plans to do that. I know that's a bit of a long shot. It just really felt out of place right now. So I wasn't totally sure what to do, if I should just like randomly pull one or what, but I decided to just choose one, and I chose The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, and I'm absolutely loving this. I knew I would. It's just so interesting to me, and yeah, so that is what we're doing. And I actually don't have a bookmark in here. I think I'm on chapter 5 maybe, so a decent way through it. So I know that's like a little bit cheating, and I'm really gonna try not to do that, but it just felt like the right thing to do. So anyway, I'm not sure if I will be able to complete my TBR from October. Essentially, I have some challenge prompts that if I don't finish 2 of the books that I assign myself, then I choose a challenge prompt. And I'm not gonna do it because I'm hopeful that I will be able to finish them. And if I for some reason don't, for December, we'll deal with both October and November. With that, I will go ahead and get started with my old TBR pick. And I'm just gonna go in there, choose one. Makes me nervous. Okay, got one. I got 2, got 1. Okay. On Beauty. Wow, okay, this is very old TBR. I've had this forever. This is great because I've had no plan to read this. It's been on my shelf for a very long time. This is Zadie Smith on Beauty. And I can't remember if this is the one that made one of the New York Times 100 books of the best 100 books of the 21st century, but I'm excited. I really don't know anything about this. I'll read a little bit. Just outside of Boston, in the small college town of Wellington, lives a family that is anything but typical. Liberated by education, complicated by race, and hobbled by self-delusion, they are about to stray onto the battleground that divides personal belief from political conviction. Doesn't say a whole lot about what it's about, but that's gonna be our first one. Woo! I'm excited. Very unexpected. So now we have to choose a nonfiction, and now I'm just like worried about this one after everything so far. I feel like I really should have vetted the books that I put in here. I have mentioned before, but I just put like everything on my shelves that's nonfiction, except for like a few that I've read more recently, which is why I choose 2 generally. So I have chosen, let's go with these 2. Okay. Sapiens graphic novel. Bill Bryson. I did this for a couple of the nonfiction. Ooh, what an interesting pick. Both kind of in similar veins. Let me grab them. The first is Sapiens, the graphic novel. I've already read Sapiens, the book, but I ended up picking up this graphic novel actually for my partner, and it's just part 1, but I haven't read it, so that's kind of also why I put it on here. Then there's Bill Bryson, which is a short history of nearly everything. And I haven't read this at all. Haven't read any of it. This is a tough one, and I will probably wait till the end so I build the rest of the TBR before actually choosing. I think the right thing to do is probably to choose this one because I've just never read it before. But it's tough because this is so big. And maybe it doesn't seem like it, but it just feels huge. Like a 500-page nonfiction. It's a lot. It's a commitment. I was trying to check to see if they had it at the library on audiobook because I think it would really help me get through this one, just being so long, but there's a wait. Okay, well, let's see how the rest of this TBR goes. I'm just worried that it's gonna get very big, but I'm leaning towards this. Okay, now it's time for our prompts. Yay! So we choose 3 prompts. These are the ones I need to like mix up a bit because I put the other ones back in from last month. Let's try to get to the bottom here, and we'll choose one. Ooh. Okay. Book set in a country I have been to. Interesting. So I have both prompts. I have a country that I haven't been to and one that I have been to. Ooh, this is a great question. Okay, this should work. This is one that I want to read and is set, it looks like in both Paris and also in Germany maybe. And I've been to both France and Germany, so that'll work. All the light we cannot see, and very much have been looking forward to reading this for a while. So this should work out well for this prompt, I think. Honestly, don't know a ton of what it's about, but I believe it has to do with a Museum of Natural History in Paris. And I think it's like historical fiction, so it happens around World War II. kind of outside of my comfort zone, but yay. Okay, so that will be the first one. Let's do another. Get in there. Okay. Okay. A book written before the year 2000. So fun. I feel like I keep getting prompts like this. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm going to choose. This works for two because I was gonna choose this for my classic anyway, and I think this is gonna help set me up for success if I'm reading all these long books. I'm gonna choose Jane Eyre. Not even sure what year this was written in. You know, I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. It says she was 1816 to 1855, so somewhere in that range, but definitely works for before the year 2000. And it is kind of a funny copy of this book to have, but my grandmother gave it to me, and this was one of her favorite books, and I haven't read it yet, and she passed a few years ago, and so I wanted to read this as my classic in November anyway, and so I think it will fit perfectly for this prompt. And yeah, I think I'm very excited to read it. I can't believe I haven't read it before. It's also very cute because there's a little note in here from her that like makes me cry a little bit. But yeah, I do wonder if that's a little bit why I've been putting off, just because of like the emotional tie, but I need to read it, I feel like, as soon as I can. So Jane Eyre. Okay, one more prompt. Uh-oh. Well, we're gonna do that one. The one that fell on the ground because it wants to be chosen. Okay. A novel about a scientist. Okay. This is funny. I don't remember like writing this prompt because I like can't really even think of books. I have to think about this for a second. This is taking me a long time. I don't know for a lot of books. Like a lot of books will explain the plot but don't explain what they do, and so I'm not sure how I came up with this prompt, but here it is. So I did think that maybe in the sci-fi genre there would be like likely scientists, and it's tough to tell in a lot of the descriptions. I read the description for Pebble in the Sky and definitely cannot tell if the character is a scientist. So, not totally sure what to do. I did find Orbital, one day in the lives of 6 women and men hurtling through space, not towards the moon or the vast unknown, but around our planet. Selected for one of the last space station missions of its kind, before the program is dismantled, these astronauts and cosmonauts from several different countries have left their lives behind to travel at a speed of over 17,000 miles an hour as the Earth reels below. Like, I feel like this would count. I'm sure they're scientists to some degree, I would think. So I think this is a good option, and I'm definitely leaning towards this. We do also have Toward Eternity, though, by Anton Hur, and Anton Hur is a translator. I love a lot of his translations, and this is the first actual book of his that I will be reading, and I'm very excited about that. It's a little bit shorter too, so both are kind of similar options in that regard. This one is in the near future, a new therapy promises to eradicate cancer by entirely replacing the body's cells with nanites. Android cells that not only cure those afflicted, but also render patients virtually immortal. So I think there's like some mystery with a patient receiving this treatment, who's a literary researcher, so not a scientist, but this next part, when the scientist who holds the patent to the nanotherapy technology transfers this character's consciousness from the machine into a droid body, yeah, things essentially start to occur from there. So this is a tough call. Actually mentions a scientist, but I'm not sure that they're like actually a main part of the story. It's tough to tell. So I think it's maybe safe to go with Orbital for this, because I just really seems like they're scientists. So I think I'm gonna stick with Orbital. Very excited. This is a newer release as well, and yeah, also smaller. So okay, yay. So those are my 3 prompts. Now we have my 3 like extra things that I like to look at the end. One is classic, and for that, luckily one of our prompts fulfilled that. Talked about this, yeah. So very excited about that. And we also have seasonal / like vibe. Like I really want to make sure that I'm reading in the season. I think it's always fun. This is a little harder because November is kind of an interesting time of year. I feel like even Jane Eyre kind of counts as this, but I might add something else as well here. I think what I'll do is choose also to add the Atlas 6 for kind of vibiness. And I think it's kind of because I have read halfway through this, but it was a while ago, so I may have to go back. But I have an advantage there. And I still really want to give this book a try, and it feels very like academic, you know, like kind of magical, but academic vibes, which feels very like late fall-ish. So I feel like that's a good pick for that. So the last thing that I have is my reread, and for this, I kind of a little bit cheated in the last month, with choosing like a bunch of more like children's books and very easy to read. So I wanted to give myself a little bit more on this one. It still is a book I read as a kid, but it is Inkheart, much bigger, but still like a middle grade. And I haven't read this book since I was very young, and I don't remember much about it, but I remember really enjoying it. And so I've always kind of wanted to reread it. So I think that it'll be a perfect time of year to do that. So that is my TBR. We have On Beauty by Zadie Smith. Oh no. I did choose the Bill Bryson book. So A Short History of Nearly Everything. That's the nonfiction. All the Light We Cannot See for our pick that is in a different country, one that I've been to. Then we have Orbital, which is a fictional like novel about a scientist. And we have Jane Eyre, which not only fulfills our prompt of written before 2000, but also fulfills our classics. And then I did add the Atlas 6 as well as another kind of like vibey seasonal book. Wow, okay, this is actually feeling a lot more than I thought it was. I've been on a roll with reading, so I definitely think I can do this. Like, I've been reading quite a few books each month, but they just like so many of these feel like commitments, you know? I forgot in that recap to add Inkheart, so that's a lot. There's a lot of books. A lot of big books. Anyway, so this is my TBR for November. I'm very excited about it and can't wait to share how it goes. So yeah, with that, hope you can follow along, and I will see you next time. Bye.